Hey everyone, my name is Rizel and I am in DevRel at Block. I'll get into that more as we go through my slides. All right, so today we're talking about how to vibe code responsibly. Let's get cooking, y'all. So, as I mentioned earlier, my name is Rizel Scarlett. I'm a tech lead of Open Source DevRel at Block. You might have interfaced with Block before, but you just might not know the name. Block is actually a company of many different companies responsible for innovations like Cash App, Square, Tidal, and Afterpay. And I made an app without writing a single line of code. Let me tell you about it, right? So my team wanted an easy way to gift people LLM credits at workshops and meetups, but it didn't seem like anyone we talked to had a good solution. We asked on social media, we asked their DevRel friends, and all of their solutions didn't really match our use case. So I built something to solve that. Let's take a look at it. So basically what it does is it connects to Open Router so we could automate the provisioning of API keys for any LLM. So you would just put in an email address like Rizel at gmail.com. And yes, you can see the API key, but don't use it. I'll delete it afterwards. This is just for the demo. It'll give you the steps on how to use it, and you can copy and paste your API key into the area we want you to. Again, this will be deleted. So no trying with using it. There's also another vibe coded application created by Scoboverse, of an application that he didn't use coding by himself to do. So basically, this is an air traffic control simulator where you can see it has sound with it. You can also see that it has like all of these 3D images with it. It's very, very detailed and impressive for someone that didn't actually use code. And then one last example, which was created by Tomas Benko, is a taxi game. So again, you have some awesome music with it, but just so it's not over me. And basically, it's like a little taxi driving game. It's giving GTA vibes where you can drive around. But again, he did not use coding by himself, manual coding to complete this. So let's talk about it, right? We're not calling it no code. We're not calling it low code. We're calling it vibe coding. We're going to go through what vibe coding is. We're going to talk about something called Model Context Protocol and how it enables vibe coding. We'll vibe code together, and then we'll talk about some best practices for vibe coding responsibly. Now, Andrej Karpathy, who was the former senior director of AI at Tesla, is the one who kind of started making vibe coding be more popular, at least the name of it. He describes it as letting go of control, trusting the AI to build, and just reacting to what it creates. Here's a little bit from what he posted. He says, there's a new kind of coding I call vibe coding, where you fully give into the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that the code even exists. This is possible because LLMs are getting too good. He says he even just talks to composer, no typing, nothing. And he says what he's calling the dumbest things because he's too lazy. And he just says, like, hey, decrease the padding on the sidebar by half. He accepts all always. He doesn't read any diffs. When he gets an error message, he just copies and pastes it in. And the code grows way beyond his comprehension for him to be able to even navigate it. And he said, okay, it's not really coding. He sees stuff, he says stuff, he runs stuff, and he copies and pastes stuff, and it mostly works. Now, vibe coding represents a shift in our industry because it democratizes coding and enables basically web developers like myself to create video games with Unity, or like you saw those other projects before, they are able to create very detailed games just by prompting. It enables people like designers or product managers to prototype full stack apps, and it enables folks like business owners or even kids to transform what they're envisioning or dreaming of into functional products. Now, this also represents a shift in AI's capabilities. In 2021, we were introduced to GitHub Copilot, which felt like autocomplete on steroids. It was literally like reading, at least it felt like it was reading our brains or reading our minds as we typed. Then we came across ChatGPT and Copilot Chat and Claude and all these systems that enabled us to chat back and forth with AI to program, write, and brainstorm. Now, this sounds fun and all, but The problem with some of those apps was that to interact with the tools, we had to copy and paste. We had to let AI know what was happening in different applications so it would be able to help us best. Let's say we're like, we need help with turning this Figma file into a web app. We would have to be like, copy, this is what's happening here, paste, this what's happening there. And they touted this idea of AI agents, agentic AI tools you wouldn't need to give a ton of context for them to take action. They just would work on your behalf. But we only ever heard of it, and for me at least, it felt like a distant promise. Like, okay, we're talking about this time where AI can do stuff for us, but I'm seeing that I have to do a lot for AI to help me. And many closed source systems try to accomplish this as well, but they still had limited access to apps, limited context as well. And this led to multiple AI tools competing against each other. That is, until we embraced open source and opening the ecosystem to enable AI systems to connect with any tool. At the end of 2024, Anthropic announced that they were working with companies like Block to build an open protocol called Model Context Protocol, or what people have been calling MCP for short. Have you heard of it? Probably you have. For those who aren't familiar, though, an open protocol is basically like a publicly available vendor neutral set of rules that defines how systems will communicate with each other. So MCP is an open protocol for how AI systems or AI tools connect with other systems. I like to think of it as an API, but for AI agents, right? It connects AI agents to everyday tools, enabling them to fit right into your workflow. This is what makes vibe coding possible because AI agents now have more autonomy and more context and more connection to everyday tools that that make it easy for you to just talk in a natural language prompt, and then the AI agent will like gather all the context it needs on, go off, grab the information, and build without human intervention or little human intervention. So, for example, you can connect your AI agent to Figma now. um, Here's another example. My coworker doesn't know how to use Blender. Neither do I, right? It has a huge learning curve. She wanted to build something with Blender, and instead she decided, let me learn a little bit about it by leveraging an AI agent. And she asked it to render a 3D scene, and the agent did all the figuring out of how to execute the task. All she said was, can you build a cozy campfire scene? Add a ground plane, and place a few logs in a circle and a whole bunch. She said she wanted a camera angle for dramatic shot. She wanted wood texture, have a fireball to emit light. And she was able to render this. By the way, the person that did this, I shouldn't just say she, is Ebony Lewis, who's going to be on a panel later on in the summit. Now, let's talk about the protocol a bit more. Let me zoom in here for you. It's a simple protocol. It looks a little complicated here, but it's a simple protocol made up of hosts, clients, and servers. The host is the main AI agent or application that starts and controls the session. For example, you might have Claude Desktop or Goose, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which often acts as the host. So when you say, can you create a calendar invite, or can you create this 3D scene in Blender, the host decides what to do, connects to that calendar service, and starts issuing commands. Then you have the client. The client is the communication layer inside of the host. So it's not a separate app, it's just part of the host. And it connects to a specific MCP server. So it handles things like tool calls, which are just function calls, and receiving responses. It's the connector between your AI agent and external tools. And then you have the server. This is the thing that everybody's excited about. An MCP server is an external program that exposes structured functionality to agents via tools. Each server defines a suite of tools that the agent can use. These tools follow a schema defined by the MCP spec, a bit of a tongue twister for me. So, for example, you might have a Google Calendar MCP server that might expose tools like creating an event, getting events, updating events, deleting events, Sounds familiar to CRUD with APIs, right? So many companies, this is what gets me excited. So many companies and community members have built their own MCP servers, including pieces. It's just, MCP is such a fun technology for this industry, and it's kind of revived the creation and community aspect, in my opinion. All right, so when connected, these tools become available to the host agent during a session so the AI agent can take real actions across systems. Here's an example of an MCP client. I mentioned Goose. Its longer name is codename Goose, and it's a local open source AI agent that follows the MCP architecture. So in this situation, it's the MCP client and an MCP host. We can connect Goose to things like a PostgreSQL MCP server, and instead of writing out queries by hand, we can ask Goose in natural language and have it run things like a common table expression for us, and it will return the results. I'm actually going to show you that right now. So I have a database, a basic student database, and I can go ahead. This is Goose that I have opened up right now. Hopefully it's big enough. I'll zoom in a bunch. It might ruin the UI, but I'd rather you see. And then we go to advanced settings and we can turn on our MCP servers here. Right now, I'm going to turn on the PostgreSQL. Okay, it's already on actually, the PostgreSQL MCP server. And I'm going to ask it something like, can you search okay, there we go. Search my database for any students whose current GPA is higher than the average in the current grade level. Tell me their name, their grade, and how much they exceed their grade's average GPA and the average GPA. So let's go ahead and press enter and see what happens. So in the background, Goose actually doesn't know anything. It's connecting to an LLM, in this case, Claude Sonnet 3.5, and it's asking Claude, like, what should I do? Rizel just asked me to search my database and get these values. Claude will come up with an entire plan for it and tell it, use this tool, use that tool, and use this other tool. So right now it came back and said it's going to help me with the query, and it came up with this CTE for me. It says, okay, we're going to do with grade averages and do this select. And it said, oh, I made an error, and it's going to keep trying. Tried again, and now it came back with the results, and it said, all right, in grade 11, Emma Johnson has a GPA of 4.0, while her grade level average is 3.9. It exceeds by 10 points. And same with John, who has also overperformed. Awesome, right? So let's get back to the slides. What we've seen behind the scenes, you might be wondering, like, how does this even work? Even though you learned about MCP, you still might be confused. The way I describe it is like Ratatouille, okay? I don't know if you all are familiar with the movie. I actually never watched it, don't hate me, but basically you have Alfredo Linguini, who's a chef. I get the idea of the movie, right? Alfredo Linguini, he's a chef. He doesn't know how to cook. That's Goose. Doesn't know exactly how to code. It's just taking in tasks from you. You're giving it orders. It's like, okay, I guess I have to do this. I don't know how. And then you have Remy, the rat, who is actually the LLM. And he's like, okay, I am going to figure out how to do this. I'm going to look at what resources we have in the kitchen. Maybe that's our MCP servers. Maybe that's our tools. Like, oh, okay, we could read a query. We could create a query. We have PostgreSQL MCP server. And Remy is the mastermind behind the scenes that tells Alfredo Linguini or Goose how to cook. So hopefully that helped lay it out for you, where the MCP client in this situation doesn't know what to do, and it's leaning on the LLM to help it figure out which MCP servers to use, and then it connects to those. All right. So we learned all about this. And remember, my talk is called Vibe Coding Responsibly. So you might be wondering, what's irresponsible about this? There's a really dark side to vibe coding. This creative freedom that people are getting comes with significant risk. Some engineers have complained about, or not complained, but lamented that they committed code with security vulnerabilities, or they introduced difficult to fix bugs on top of spaghetti code, or they lost weeks or months of work due to a lack of version control. And they've exposed sensitive information like environment variables or API keys in production. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to challenge everyone to redefine this idea of vibe coding because I think it's powerful. I think it's wonderful, but it also can be dangerous. Most folks define vibe coding as Andrej, where it's purely chaotic development with no rules. But today, we're redefining it as flowing with AI while protecting your project, your team, and your future self. Fortunately, Goose has built a ton of tooling to help you vibe code responsibly. And here are some tips that I have on how you can vibe code responsibly. First of all, use version control. There are moments where AI agents get a little excited and they change too many files and that Control Z just can't fix. It's best to commit every change that you get on so that you can have clear points and when the AI agent, whether it's Goose, whether it's Cursor or Claude, so you can get recovery points, clear differences, and be able to refer quickly. So for me, I have vibe coded a little too close to the sun before, and I asked an AI agent, can you please just fix this dependency conflict for me? And I figured, oh, it did it. I pushed the code up. And then I looked, my app completely changed. The design, the functionality. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I just wanted to fix a dependency conflict. Luckily, because I used version control, I was able to just roll back real quick. The other thing I want to remind people to do is to ask questions and think critically. Even if you're vibe coding, don't turn your brain off. You can ask Goose or Claude or Cursor, whichever tool you're using, questions like, why did you make this change? Is this secure? How are we handling secrets? Is this the best way to structure the database? And by pushing your agent to explain itself, you'll build a better product and you'll also learn a lot along the way. Another thing that's important is to protect sensitive files, like your API keys or files with your API keys or any secrets that you have. Goose actually has this functionality, and it has something called a Goose ignore file. You could think of it similar to a git ignore file, but for your AI agent. It defines which files and folders Goose should not read, modify, or interact with. And you want to use this to prevent things like accidental changes to environment variables, modifying sensitive configurations, you don't want it to change things like test fixtures or snapshots, or don't change like infrastructure deployment configurations, maybe code examples and documentation, or running shell commands that you don't want it to run. So that's just something to help. Another thing is blocking unsafe MCP servers. So although they're so cool and everyone's building them, the everyone's building them part is also what presents a real risk. Some MCP servers can introduce security risks, especially if compromised. There's something right now called slop squatting, and it's an attack technique where bad actors register domains or create malicious packages with names that are spelled slightly differently from legitimate packages or sites. So you can use something called the allow list feature in Goose to prevent Goose from calling unsafe or untrusted tools. Also, my suggestion to you, this is a small thing to do, but really powerful, is to choose the right LLM. Not all LLMs are built the same when you're playing with an AI agent, and many of them allow you to mix and match your LLM tools. Different LLMs play different with different agents. For us, Codename Goose plays really well with Claude Sonnet 3.5 and GPT 4.0. Lower performing models might sometimes work, but they might also hallucinate. They might be like more likely to hallucinate or misunderstand your goals. So it's good to just experiment and research which perform best. Check out like benchmarking and leaderboards for each agent. Also, choosing the right mode. So while it's fun to let your AI agent take the lead, not every moment calls for full autonomy. Sometimes you need a pause, review, or plan before any code changes. So Goose actually kind of offers something like this. I'm going to show you that right now. Right here at the bottom, we can see, right here in the middle, we can see we have a completely autonomous mode, manual approval, smart approval, or chat only. With completely autonomous, you're just letting your AI agent go wild, go crazy. But with manual approval, you say at every single step, ask me first if you could run this. Smart approval, it'll pay attention to like, oh, is RM-RF a risky move? Let me ask Rizel first before running it. And chat only is when you just want to go for brainstorming. And my very last advice for you all is tap into the rules or the hints. So Cursor has something called Cursor Rules. Goose has something called Goose Hints. GitHub Copilot has its own version as well. And these are files you can use to provide additional context. In this particular situation, the Goose Hints file gives Goose additional context, like I said, about your project's coding standards, architectural preferences, and security practices. So you could say stuff like, never expose API keys, use prepared statements for database queries, avoid using eval or unsafe dynamic code. So those are things that could be helpful. I do want to end with saying that vibe coding is not inherently wrong. It marks a new chapter in how we build, and it opens the door for everyone. But experienced developers have to be we have a responsibility. We have to be responsible in defining what smart and safe vibe coding looks like. And there's room for us to basically code creatively without sacrificing quality or security. If you do want to try out an MCP client like Goose, you can scan this QR code and you can connect it to the Pieces MCP server as well. Thank you.